Hello, come one, come all to the deep dive demonstration of our new Thump 1 synthesizer. Designed mostly, it's very good at kicks and bass kind of noises, but it does other mad things as well. It is a multi-breakpoint envelope synthesizer with a couple of layers, with two different layers, a kick layer, mostly designed to do like kick noises, and another layer that's kind of a layer noise that's based on the old JP 8000 Supersaw engine, I believe. So it's a kind of Supersaw sub to the main kick layer of the engine. You may have seen it. Here it is in all its glory. Let's just go through the interface and see what on earth we're looking at here. So this top half is, here's some options here. We'll look at those in a minute. These are kind of global patch settings for describing, well, these first two knobs here describe the rate of play of the breakpoint envelopes. So, but they're kind of interestingly designed. Let me just pop up the tool tips, and we can see the attack knob describes how quickly the playback head will be traversing the first 20% of the envelope and how quickly it's interpreting your breakpoint envelope shapes of that envelope. And the decay parameter, the decay knob, describes how quickly or slowly to travel through the remaining 80% of the envelope. So mostly kind of everything after around this bit of the screen, let's say, is dedicated to the decay function, and everything before that is dedicated to the attack function. They are a very powerful way to explore or change the sounds you're making, quickly make adjustments, and we'll look at the power of these tools as we dive into this synthesizer very soon. Here is a master pitch function. This basically changes the pitch of the whole engine. All the engines, all the sound generation sources are changed, and it's good for, say, like if you end up with a kick noise, a 808 distorted kick noise whose fundamental doesn't sit where you need it to, you can bend it down a little bit to get it on pitch, so when you're playing notes on your keyboard, it matches the notes in the song that you're playing along to, or the notes of which the sounds from this machine are being triggered. This is a glide knob. We know what glide does. It slides between the notes. Bigger values, slower slide. Put it back to 0. We have another knob here, which is it even says it's a stereo width knob. And what this does is it duplicates the engines and puts one to the side and detunes one or other of the engines, maybe both very slightly, to create a width, a wideness to the sound, let's say. There's a switch here in the options menu for disabling that stereo functionality on the main kick engine. So you only have one oscillator doing the main thing. Let's see what happens. Well, let's go through these options quickly because we did just address them. MIDI reset oscillators, that's basically a phase reset function. What that means is it will start the oscillators from the same point every time, and that's kind of what you want for making some kinds of kick noises. Some kinds of noises you'll want the oscillators to start definitely in one position, so you get an exactly the same sound every time you re-trigger the note. We have a legato knob here, switch here, which, as you will know from a legato function, kind of slides notes together. If you play overlapping notes on your keyboard, then the amplitude envelope won't be re-triggered. And it might even say here, maybe all the envelopes. So the pitch envelopes as well aren't re-triggered. Just at the extra note that was played, all the envelopes, all the kind of pitch content is pitched to that new note, assuming you didn't let go of the note before you hit the new note. Stereo kick engine, we've just touched on that. This affects both the main kick engine here. So if let's turn it up to max, you can hear there are now two kicks wide. You can hear it more like that. And you can turn that off. because you might want only the sublayer to be wide. So the kick sound in the middle is monophonic, and there's only one engine performing that kick sound. Then we have the layer engine, which is all the super saws we were talking about a minute ago, but wide, double engines, wide and detuned. You might think, what can we do with that? There are many modes in this second engine that allow us to create crazy noises and kind of affect this engine from knobs over here. But anyway, we'll look at that as we slowly move through this beast of a plugin. So let's disable that. Bring the width down to the middle. Just carry on going through these options. We have a very basic single option velocity matrix, velocity modulation selection. So we can, by default, there's normally velocity mapped to volume. Let me just see why there's no noise coming out, because I turned that off. So quiet, loud, we know what velocity to volume does, but we can also assign the velocity to pitch. So if I hit this lightly, it's kind of doing the current assignment, the depth that this knob is assigned to modulate the pitch with this envelope. But if I hit harder, I'll hit increasingly harder. There we go. Harder velocity means the pitch depth goes further and obviously starts higher up. This can be assigned to many different things, and I mean, if you're making noises with it, have fun with selecting whatever you want here. You'll get a feel for the general effect of the sound depending on the kind of sound you're making and which one you might want to select from here. We'll leave it on the default to punch at the moment, which is kind of handy with various different kinds of noises, but I'll put that back to 0. So all we're basically getting is velocity to volume. Smooth is, there's a few ways we needed to kind of smooth the clicks between the engines. So for example, if I slow down this sound, you can hear those quick triggers. There's a little click at the beginning when I initially hit the note. That's because the phase is being reset, and so the oscillator is shifting very quickly to another position before we can hear it. If I turn that off, a certain amount of that clicking will disappear because the oscillators are what we would now call free running, and the amplitude envelope, this one here, this envelope is just starting wherever the oscillator might be in its cycle. So all it's doing is turning it up very quickly. And if you can hear, there's like fewer clicks than if we have MIDI reset oscillators on. Additionally, if there's still some clicking you want to get rid of, we can increase this and it will kind of change the way the envelopes are behaving a little bit and give you less clicks. So we can press them, trigger them close together, and we don't get the clicks. That's what that smooth function's for. And the pitch bend range, we know what pitch bend does. You select it like this and pitch bend away. I'm going to stick reset oscillators back on again and not that for the moment. Okay. So let's look at this main engine here. What have we got here? So we're just going to disable the layer. That's not happening. We can't hear any of this at the moment. We'll just look at the kick layer. We've got 5 knobs along the top here and 5 kind of related knobs underneath. Now this top knob here, I'm going to turn off the tooltips. So first of all, we have these arrows, and these arrows describe which breakpoint envelope we are looking at. So if we click the arrow above the punch knob, we're looking at the breakpoint envelope that describes how the pitch is going to be affected by the modulation depth. This is modulation depth. So if I set it to 0, the note will be flat. There's no change in pitch. But as soon as I turn it up, you can hear the pitch being changed, and we begin to hear one of our favourite kick sounds. Now let's just see how this attack knob affects this, for example. So we can slow it down, turn it into like a floppy 909 style kick, or we can tighten it up and get rid of the body of the synth, basically, the body of the kick sound. This is quite fun for just finding sweet spots. You might have your envelope shape, but you can adjust the time, the rate at which is being played back, and find the sweet spots that give your sound the bite and weight that you might be looking for, or get rid of the bite and weight that you might not want. So that's the attack on the pitch envelope. So this pitch envelope, at full blast, at full modulation, starts from quite high up. You can hear it. And this knob is a kind of tuning the kick oscillator. So we can put that up to, we can double click most of these knobs. You can double click just underneath them, and a little text box will appear in which you can put numbers. If we put that to 12, I'm playing in the same octave on my keyboard, but it's now gone up an octave. I can do -12. And that's what happens there. So this is a local kind of oscillator tuning knob. What I would say is that this is a kind of multiplication modulation. So it's adding on top of the kind of root, the fundamental note. So at 0, it's just the note, and if you turn it up, all we're doing is coming down to that note. So if you've got a noise that's kind of like this, where we've got a big long curve and we don't actually reach the bottom of the note until right at the end of it, you might need to adjust the sound of this, the kind of center frequency of this note, and you would do that up here with this main kind of master pitch thing, because that will adjust this layer as well. If you've got stuff happening over here, if you only adjust this knob, this layer is not affected, as far as I know, by this pitch. So let's recenter that again. And that's the punch knob. It's basically a pitch envelope. Let's add some. That's what happens. It's a fun thing. Let's just get rid of them. We're back to our floppy 909. Nice. What have we here? This is the next knob along, and it is the wavetable selection. So at maximum, no modulation is possible. It's kind of similar to this knob. Much of these, this knob is a depth, like a modulation depth, saying how much the pitch envelope is going to be applied to the kind of root pitch. This is slightly different. What this is with the table knob, you are selecting the starting point of the wavetable. There's a load of wavetables in here. Load of them for making your crazy kick or bass noises. There we go. So that's a fun one to start with. And this knob here describes whereabouts in the waveform the modulation, if there is any, will start. So at the moment, there's no. We can look at this modulation breakpoint envelope here, and it's flat. It's nothing there. If we have a modulation, you'd think you'd hear something, but because this particular knob is almost maximum, we're only traversing from the end of the table to this point of the table, which is quite near the end, so not very far. If we pull this back down to 0 again, you can see the little icon down here changes with the dial. So at the beginning of the table, we've got like a pure wave. So let's do it opposite, and it's more like a sine. It looks like a stepped sine. But as we go through the wavetable, the sound becomes richer and more complex. If we start further down. So right now, we're telling the engine to start at the beginning of this particular wavetable and modulate from the middle to the end. So we're not even hearing the first half of it. We're not even playing back the wavetables in the first half of that particular table. But now we are. I hope that makes sense. There's many tables here to go through. Lots of them are kind of distorted 808 things, but there's a couple of other crazy noises. There's some fun stuff to be had here, I can tell you. So that's the table knob. The modulation isn't described, the modulation depth isn't described by the knob in terms of like minimum, no modulation, half modulation, full modulation. That isn't what it is. The modulation is described by the actual envelope. This is just a kind of offset point. It's like a starting point. But you can't go underneath it. That's the whole point. You can't go beneath this point in the table. I think you understand what I mean. These numbers are kind of unipolar. They're above this point. We can't tell this modulation table to go beneath the point at which we're saying start from. I'm sure you understand the main thrust of that statement. So let's move on to the drive knob. And this is more powerful, well, not more powerful than it seems, but there's more going here than you can initially you might initially suspect. So the routing is that both of these engines go through the drive knob. This is like the final stage. So even the amplitude, even the level stuff, this is all happening. This is an amplitude modulation envelope, and I'm telling this sound to go completely silent before it hits the drive. This isn't saying turn the drive output down. This is lessening the input going into the drive knob, which is an interesting way to set things up, don't you think? But okay, here we go. So back to the drive knob. There's two functions here. So both of these oscillator layers go through the drive knob. There's also a filter in case you decide that some of your work is got too many high frequencies. Clangorous. So you want to take some of that off? It's got like a 1-pole or 2-pole filter, a very soft, gentle filter just to take the top off. Should you want to? Should you need to? Depending on your noise. So that's the drive knob. This is the buzz knob. What the buzz knob does is if we look at the tooltips, are they open? I think they are. What it does is it basically kind of follows the energy of the signal, kind of like a very quick envelope follower, and adds the sound of that envelope follower back into the sound of the output, basically. Kind of, it sounds almost like a broken speaker kind of thing, which is why it's called buzz. Let's find a noise that will highlight this a bit nicer. And we can just clear that. I'm going to turn this up because I want the amplitude to be heard a little bit. So this is just the amplitude, the amp envelope, the amplitude envelope. It's always a bit of a mouthful, that one. But this buzz knob, so at no, let's just put this down to like a simple, some kind of simple wave. Turn the buzz up, and you can hear that extra harmonic it's added, or a tone, an extra tone. It's kind of quite soary. It's kind of making the sound more evenly harmonic. So it sounds kind of like a saw wave. It doesn't sound like a square wave, right? It sounds like a saw. The interesting thing about this particular function is that it's quite frequency dependent. So I'm going to go up the keyboard. I'll go up a few octaves. So That's 1 octave. There's another octave above that. Okay, you can already hear the sound kind of under pressure. Let's go an octave above that. Nice. And more. Let's have another one. Yeah, it's like massive, heavy DC. It's kind of messing, almost swore disgustingly. It's messing with the high frequency energy, basically. Let's do another octave up and hear what that sounds like. Oh yeah, it's just like punch in the face. And that can be affected with this knob underneath it. Just kind of softens the impact of all those, that extra kind of layer there. I don't think it's a post filter, it's more like to be treatment of the following of the signal itself. But you get some nice noises out of that. But then again, let me show you, this happens before the drive output. So you stick that through the drive and you get your mad stuff. And once you've, oh yeah, okay, so it goes even crazier. The DC offset stuff from this buzz module goes even crazier when you whop it through the drive. Listen to this. Oh, there we go. So, you know, you can mess with the signal quite a lot before it actually hits this final drive stage. This buzz thing's pretty mental for cool effects, and stuff. But let's go back to the next in the column here of things we're looking at, which is the amplitude envelope. This is for the level of the kick. And again, like I say, this level is before the drive and the buzz, but it also has functionality over in the other layer as well. We'll see what that does when we look at that layer. But for the moment, this is basically an amplitude envelope. You use it to describe the volume shape of your sound. And we also have this knob here that paired with this level knob, which is an FM knob. And that, see, that will, depending on your waveform, will have different characteristics. And also this, the oscillator that's being the FM modulator in this little function here is tracked by this pitch engine, the oscillator kick engine. And is also obviously affected by the pitch curve. Anyway, there you go. Nice. Okay. That just reminds me of D'Artagnan and the three musketeers. One for all and all for one. Musker hounds are always ready. Here we go. Anyway, let's look at this other layer. Look at the kind of supersaw layer, which is kind of what it's called. Just turn the drive down and the bars, and that doesn't affect this particular layer. So let's open the filter so we can hear all those beautiful supersaws, and maybe we'll widen it as well. Let's stick a bit of beauty on this thing. Detune knob for these. So the top sort of 6 settings, actually, and that as well, I think they're all affected by the detune knob. The detune knob does what you'd expect a detune knob to do. Slightly detunes all these oscillators that are being part of the supersaw. That's quite nice. So that's so there's a few supersaw configurations here with different distances in between the 2 notes that are within the supersaw engine. That's a 5th, as you can hear. We've got a major 3rd, I think. and we have a minor third. Some lovely octaves. Oh, let's just... So obviously, when you detune these things, they turn into these ginormous trance machines. Let's move to... So we've got an octave, which is like an octave above the note we're currently playing. The other... one of the Supersaw engines is now a note, a whole octave above the root you might be playing, the root note you're playing, and we can obviously supersaw that, detune that supersawness as well. We've got unison, which is the same note, so both of these Supersaw engines are playing exactly the same note. So it's super fat, super fat, super fat. A sub, so the other note that this engine is playing is now an octave below. Chonky and bendy. So this is kind of similar to the, I would say the unison, but it is responding much more heavily to the pitch bend controls. All of these will respond to the punch. So the oscillator in here is attached to this punch envelope, as you can see. And all of these behave like that. They'll all be like, some of them might not be as deep as others. See, both of your Supersaw oscillators are bending in this with the pitch, with the punch envelope. You kind of hear them both bending, as in they would be with the octave as well. So they're just like, you can hear that bend. You can hear the bend. Let's just turn this up a bit so we can. There we go. We can hear that a bit more. And same with unison. Although that does feel like it's going a bit further, doesn't it? So that's quite a big modulation interpretation of this envelope here. Let's see what else we've got. That's going about the same amount of distance. And here's where it goes crazy. Bendy, this mode bendy, as you can hear, goes a long way. So we pull this down about halfway and compare it to the barely moving pitch bend of that to this. So all these last few settings have had a filter. We can take the top off if we want to. This particular setting is, as you can hear, doing the same large pitch bend interpretation of the punch breakpoint envelope, but we have a filter that has a slightly resonant cutoff on it, whereas these other filters are less. Well, they're not resonant. They're not self-oscillating or resonant or anything like that. It's just a clean filter. That's a little bit squelchy. Sounds like the. No, it doesn't sound like the old Admiral Bulldog on the back of the shelf that Vic Reeves, I think, voiced initially. Okay, so here's another one. Here's another one of the engines that does a lot more stuff than just the previous 6. So what we've got here is interplay between these knobs, more interplay between these knobs and this little area here. So I'm going to put detune to minimum, and I'm going to put the punch in a kind of more in a position that sort of you can hear. So let's see what's going on here. None of that. So we've got, this is just the output. This is what we can hear. Now what's going on here is let's turn the level down. First of all, let's just see what's going on with this punch. How much is that being affected by that? That much. Now there's another thing going on here, which is this level knob. This is FMing this sound. It's doing crazy stuff to this sound, and we'll sort of try and clean it up so we can hear it better. But let's do its... So I kind of want to demonstrate the fact that the sound coming out of this side of the engine is affecting, it's kind of FMing this side. So okay, here. So at very low frequencies, you can hear that big whoa, 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 whoa. That's the pitch modulation of this envelope against this. So this is the carrier. This is what you can hear in the FM little mode of this particular, the FM configuration of this particular mode. You can hear the carrier. That's what you normally can hear when you do FM. And this is the modulator. This is changing the frequencies or the sort of the engine of this sound. So imagine what's going on here. We've got a super saw engine here with 28, potentially up to 28 oscillators being FM'd, all being FM'd by this particular side, this kick side of the engine. So you're going to get, there's like instant madness, should you be seeking it. But there's, the way to think about this is like, we've got a load of different wavetables here to affect, to do the FM against this carrier with. This is the pitch modulation of the carrier, well, of the whole engine, but we've got the kick engine turned off. Look, it sounds like this. Can't even hear it. It's running so low. Look, that's me running like 4 or 5 octaves higher. But at the playable level I'm playing it at down here, where we can hear that stuff, all that massive modulation, all that pitch modulation is happening because of the way this kick is configured. So it's a bit kind of squarey. You can hear that's the kind of shape of that. Let's try and do it to a... There we go. Let's a bit wobblier, kind of a smoother wobble. We can put it up to something stupid like that. We can see. You can hear the complexity of this waveform FMing this, basically. And as soon as the filter's after it, we can kind of clean it up a bit, depending on what you're looking for, right? Depends what you're looking for. You might be looking for this utter filth. Top shelf filth noises. Oh, yeah. So this this dirt mode is also affected by this level knob, but we can't hear it here. Don't remember, the kick layer's turned off, but this is like the depth of the FM modulation. So if you think of it like this, in this dirt mode, this punch knob describes the pitch curve of the carrier, of the modulator, of both of them actually. The pitch curve of both oscillators. This describes the shape of the oscillator that's being the modulator. And this is how loud the modulator is sent to the carrier. Imagine this is the carrier, this layer is the carrier layer. And this describes how loud we are hitting these oscillators. So basically the depth of modulation. This is the shape of the modulation, and this is the depth of the modulation. Oh, that's the shape of the modulation as well. This is the depth of the modulation. So there's another, and again also, you can screw it up by doing this kind of mental stuff to it. Because this buzz is only affecting this kick layer before it leaves it and affects here. Like, remember a minute ago we had a look at low noises with a high buzz parameter, and like it's okay down low. As soon as you head up, I'm heading up the keyboard now, octave up, it it starts the DC offset, because of the way the buzz is working, because of what the buzz is doing and how it's adding tone to the sound, it can be quite DC offsetty. Setty? Aliens? Offsetty? And so the modulation that we're passing to the to this dirt layer here is more complex than just a regular waveform, because it's we're pitching it around, and then at some point in the waveform, when the frequencies are so high, it's adding a load of crazy DC offset, because that's what this buzz is doing, adding tones and then sort of offsetting the signal. And even though we're not sticking it through the drive yet, it hasn't even been distorted. This is just that's just the sound of the FM on like 28 super saws. It's madness, isn't it? Utter madness, I tell you. So we'll turn the buzz down, and then now we're not shoving a load of DC weirdness out of the modulator towards the carrier. You can hear the kind of crazy FMness. There's loads of what sounds like aliasing, but also maybe ring modulation, amplitude modulation, sort of very fast modulation of something. There's kind of frequencies going up or frequencies going down. It's kind of all over the place. It's beautiful. I'm going to slow it down and listen to it. Ooh, yeah. Let's slow the attack down as well, just for... I mean, this is just such a great sound effect, like futuristic sound effect machine, isn't it? Is it not? I think it is. So these last few layer options here are kind of affected by this. So let's move. We've done dirt. Let's move to fat. That's fat. Isn't that fat? Let's see. So this is just a basic another detune function. I'm going to go down a few octaves and see what's going on here. Let's delete that and just get this. There's no effect. Oh, yeah, right. We are doing something. Let's have a listen. Let's put that up. Let's put that up to 24. Let's put it down to minus 48. So again, we can hear it's frequency modulating this other oscillator here, and we like a bit of FM. There's loads of really crazy cross FMing that goes on in here. Maybe let's do some of that. Again, this mode is one of those FM modes where this is the FM depth ultimately. So if we turn it down, all we're hearing is all these oscillators doing their wonderful super soary thing. Soon as we, although the pitch is being affected by this envelope, as a lot of the other alternative modes are. So we're affecting the pitch, we can hear that. But we are, even though we can't hear this kick layer, we can make it affect the frequency of the other layer. Little. Nice. Let's make it maybe a lot clearer. You can hear what's going on there. We are basically, again, FMing all these super saws with, well, FMing quite slowly. Can speed it up to audio rate modulations, but because of the nature of the engine, I think this is 12-bit as well. I think this Supersaw engine is kind of 12-bit, so it's only going to be responding to a certain rate of audio rate manipulation. Beyond a certain rate, it's going to be, who knows, internally aliasing, naturally filtering. I'll have to ask Dave. But inevitably, once you start reducing the bit depth or the sample rate of this stuff, you're going to be losing modulation depth quality ultimately. So, but remember, this is a 12-bit Supersaw engine, so yeah, some changes over here you might not actually hear just because of the way the engine is responding to this, which is basically the modulating side of the FM engine. Any of these which are doing FM stuff, like these last four, turn the kick engine off and it turns into your modulator, ultimately. With this being the depth of the modulation, this being the depth of the internal pitch bending stuff, and that's the shape of the table. And also you can mess with it with this buzz function as well. Don't forget the crazy buzz function, which does unpredictable things higher up the keyboard. It's quite weird. Let's have a look at the noise briefly. This, you'll know what to expect here. This is just a noise function. Stereo, mono. We can slow it down a bit so it's not so flipping loud. We can filter that, obviously. Stand two pole, I think it's 2-pole, yeah. But this knob here is the interesting knob. We can change it from like pure white noise to, let me just slow that down a bit so I can hold it a bit longer, to, I mean, we're sort of fading in between the pure white noise and this static, which becomes more spacious the higher up the knob you go. And this can be good for, I mean, yeah, just like adding layers to your crazy patch. Why not? Turn it to doing that, turn the filter down, turn it up, and then oh yeah, there we go, that's what we're looking for. And why not put a kind of filter? I like these noises that start with nothing and end with something. That's a lovely bass noise, isn't it? Flipping out. Everything's stereo here. See, we've got the kick as stereo as well. Let's turn the kick engine stereo stuff off. And you get like a solid middle thing. And you can also do things like this, so you can stop this engine. And then you have the other engine doing its thing. That's in the filter, isn't it? There you go, you can do that. Oh, look at your. Okay, so that's the noise layer. And let's just look at the final FM thing. This, again, is quite similar to the fat mode. In the sense that all this stuff over here kind of affects the FM stuff over here, but rather than, I think, yeah, rather than this layer being, rather than it being Supersaws, I think, let me just open that up. So this is, you can hear what's going on. So we've got this FM mode now has rid us of these fabulous 28 oscillators doing the JP8000 Super Saw model, and we've just got, I recognise them as being simple sines. That's what we've got here. And without that stuff, without this carrier, sorry, without the modulator feeding into it, we turn the level down. This is just a sine wave now. And as you know, with sine waves, if you let me just turn that up, so there we go. If you feed a sine wave back on itself, you basically meet at one point sawtooths. It's kind of what that sounds like. And the further you go, you get noise. Noise like this. That's just a sine wave being fed back into itself, like at very high volume. Nice little, you don't often get a lovely little FM feedback circuit as simple as that, as effective as that in synthesizers these days. Maybe you do, but not as easily accessible as this one. So if we turn up the level, we're now going to start feeding in the modulating waveform. So let's put the feedback down. So we're just listening to the effect of the FM. Oh yeah, what lovely, delightful. Turn it up. And again, because this is an FM like sine engine here now over here, we can just again chuck it any one of these wavetable shapes and let it do its crazy magic on the waveform. Let's put this to -12. Let's put -12 there. Ooh. So let's do some quick modulation on. Yeah, so we've got a waveform here that has a few different complex shapes in it. That's the end of the wavetable. That's the beginning of the wavetable. Maybe that's the beginning and that's the end. Let's move through that wavetable in an obscure, unpredictable fashion, just like that. You can kind of hear it affecting. Let's turn the pitch to. There we go. Let's put the wave. So we're going to say to the wavetable modulation breakpoint modulation envelope, you want to start from the bottom, and we're going to describe this path through it. You can hear what's going on there. Isn't that lovely? Let's do it. It's changing the waveform that's going into the modulating, the waveform that we're modulating the carrier with. Is that right? Yeah, the carrier is the one that's making the noise. This one here is the carrier. This modulating waveform is complex and changey, which is what we like. Colours. Let's change shape. See what we get if we. Different kinds of FM. Oh, that's a beefy. Ooh. Lovely, there's some craziness happening here. Stick a bit of buzz on that. Flap that speaker cone around a little bit. And let's just turn the drive up, because we haven't really have done some drive work. But it is one of the this stuff is where we like to be. Let's just do that -24. And since we're coming to the end of this video, let's just try and do something slightly more fun. Ooh. We could maybe even. Let's do, just want to do a bit of that, a bit of that. And there you go. That is my final noise. I'm going to play it once more because I'm going to slow it down so it lasts a bit longer. And then I can talk over it. Thank you for coming to this wonderful session of deep diving into Toybox Audio's Thump 1. It's been a wonderful afternoon. I like all this craziness. Oh, what a delight. Let me just up the buzz a bit. Turn the filter down. Oh, and let's just add the extra FM thing in here. Let's do it like that. Let's do it like that. And there you go. I think that's the end. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Thump 1. I think there's some interesting stuff there for you to take home. And I hope you jotted all your notes down clearly and concisely. Anyway, you have fun. I'm going to make a noise. And yes, happy thumping one, happy Thump 1 day. Enjoy playing with your new free synthesizer. Go and make music. Thank you. Goodbye.